Hello everyone, welcome to another edition of the 4LadsHadADream podcast. My name is Stevie Clifford, I'm your host, and joining us today is regular co-host, chief sports writer at the Glasgow Times and Herald's Group, Mr. Chris Jack. Chris, how are you?
Hi Stevie, all good, thanks.
And joining us today is a very special guest. He won 6 league titles with Rangers, 3 Scottish Cups, 2 League Cups, and is also a member of our Hall of Fame. He had a testimonial against Rangers back in 2002. And this is part 1 of his story, his playing years. Please welcome Mr. Stuart McCall. Stuart, how are you?
Brilliant, lads. Thanks very much.
So it's great to have Stuart with us, and we'll just get straight into it. I think, Stuart, as I said, thanks for joining us. Early on in your career, can you tell us a wee bit about who your heroes and early influences were?
Yeah, I think going back to when I was a long time ago. Although I was born in Leeds, I was always brought up Scottish, if you like. So my dad played, back in the 50s, played at Blackpool with Stanley Matthews and the likes, and moved to Leeds, and that's where I was born. He played with great John Charles and Jackie Charlton, people like that, but that was the end of his career. So, but even though I was born down there, as I say, I was always brought up Scottish, and, if I remember doing a thing when I was 13, 14, and thankfully, I still had the little programme. I used to play for a Sunday team, Pudsey Juniors, and they used to do a little profile on you at the back of it. Just a few little questions, favourite team, favourite player, things like that. And at the time, going back years before that, it was like the people growing up, Billy Bremner, probably, Eddie Gray, the Scottish players that played for Leeds, because I used to, go to the Leeds games. When I filled that in, it was... Favourite player was Tony Curry at the time. He was a really skillful player. But favourite team was Glasgow Rangers. So it was really always good to look back on them, because people, when you sign, they go, "Oh yeah, you always said you were a Rangers supporter." But I had it there from when I was 13-year-old. So my influences really with the Leeds players coming through at that time. But even though Leeds were my team down in England, when I came up, I remember the first time I came up to a Rangers game. I can't remember, 10 or 11. And I got on the bus, supporters bus in Hamilton. And them days you used to have sweeps. So you drew out, obviously, I don't know, what would they put in, 10 pence maybe or something like that. And drew out a team and a number. And we were playing Dundee that day. And I remember I drew out Rangers 9, which I was delighted with. Big Colin Steen, I was hoping that was going to be when we got there, and it was. And me cousin Billy drew out Rangers 2, which was the late great Sandy Jardine. Anyway, we get to the game, and then the game kicks off. Big Colin goes through, rounds the keeper, just about to put it in the net, and gets brought down for a penalty kick. And I'm there going, "Yes, on you go," thinking Big Colin would step up, centre forward, and take the penalty. My cousin says, "Hey, not too fast." Sandy stepping up. Sandy stepped up and put it in. So that's my first. He was jumping all over me. He'd won the money. Yeah, that was my first memory of going up to a Rangers game. Yeah, as I said, as a kid, I went to Leeds because I lived on the doorstep of it. But I had some good memories coming up to watch Rangers as well.
That's something I didn't know, obviously, because I knew you were a Leeds fan as a young boy, but I didn't know there was the Rangers kind of the side of it. So that's nice to hear. You start, obviously, you're playing football at that age. You play for, obviously, Farsley Celtic, and then you come through Bradford's youth system, and you very quickly get initiated into the first team, and you make a staggering 134 consecutive league appearances. How did this all transpire? And talk us through your kind of early career and making the breakthrough and things.
Yeah, it's funny enough, you just mentioning there when I'm under 16 playing for Farsley Celtic. It's hard, isn't it? Hard word to say, but it's funny because they actually played in green and white as well, did Farsley.
Well, I didn't want to mention it, but I felt we had to.
But in all honesty, and a couple of lads that used to play there, and I still speak to occasionally now, I always remember I used to wear my Rangers top underneath the green and white top, even as a 15, 16-year-old lad. So we used to have a bit of joke of it. That never thinking for 1 second I'd end up, playing for the Rangers, but I used to wear a Rangers top under that. So even though I played for Farsley Celtic, it was. But they were a good side at the time. Actually, they brought a lot of players through into professional football. But yeah, no, obviously went to Bradford as a young kid, and broke into the first team at 18. And then, we had some, obviously, we got promoted in 84, 85, but then had the tragedy of the fire disaster where I had, a few of my family who were in it. My dad got burnt and things like that. It's not something I like talking about, but it happened. It's, I go to the memorial every year now, and it's amazing how many years ago that is. But yeah, so I had some fantastic times, great times, playing so many games as a young kid, and getting a promotion, and just being in and around the first team was brilliant. But obviously, we had the tragedy of the disaster in 85.
That was something, obviously, I was going to ask you about, a really difficult situation, but you've covered that, and we'll kind of, obviously we want to be respectful to that time, but we'll move past it and then ask you about your kind of, what were the highlights of your early time at Bradford, because that wins you a move to Everton.
Yeah.
And you begin to not be noticed, but this is your big step up. You then become, you get your goals in the FA Cup final and things like that. What can you tell us about your move from Bradford to Everton, and I mean, a massive move and a great moment for you?
Yeah, well, it was funny really, because especially in these times at the moment when you've got not a lot to do, I was changing looking through some old suitcases and things I've got, and I found some old videos, and also found some scrapbooks. And it's funny looking back, because back, I think I was about 20. I remember Sir Alex Ferguson and Archie, who were managers at Aberdeen at the time, coming down to watch me playing a pre-season game, and so that was sort of got me on the map. And then I got David Hay at Celtic, made a £100,000 bid. I thought, oh no, there's no way I was going there. And then I think it was Jack Charlton at Newcastle. So I was getting linked from 20, 21, 22. But after the tragedy, the fire in 85, when I think I was 21, just coming up to 21, it just made it bonded the club together, and I certainly for myself. And I was never, even though obviously the Everton move came up, I was never looking to leave, because we started building a good, young, hungry team, and the aim was to obviously to go further again and try to get into the top league. And in the last season for Bradford, 87-88 season, was the first season the playoffs came out in England, and we were up against some big sides them days. I mean, Middlesbrough, a lot of top players, Palliston and Big Tony Mowbray, and they had a really talented side, and I think Villa got promoted. But anyway, we ended up that season. We got in the playoffs, and we played Middlesbrough, and we beat them at home 2-1, and we went up to their place, and we got beat 2-0. I think it was extra time, and Colin Harvey was there that day, and I got a phone call there after it, saying that Everton were interested. But my dream at that stage was to play for Bradford in the Premiership, not anybody else. Everton, I was linked with Liverpool, Arsenal, players like that, teams like that, should I say. But, if Bradford could have got in that time, because of the bond that we created at the club with what had happened, I would have happily signed, for a 5 or 10 year deal. It wasn't about the finances, it was just about the bond, that I say, that we'd been with the club. So as it happened, in one way I was getting a chance to go and play in the top league in the Premiership then, was it Division 1 or whatever it was then, with Everton, a fantastic club. But I was also sort of leaving a dream behind, because as I said, I wanted to try to get into the top league with Bradford as a sort of gesture to all the supporters. But yeah, no, it was good, brilliant. I loved my time at Everton. 3 great years, fantastic football club, and it was good memories really.
The 2 goals in the FA Cup. There's not a lot of FA Cup final against Liverpool. There's not a lot of people that will be able to say that and have that on their CV, especially from you, Stuart, because we came to know you as a very dynamic, hard-working midfielder. For you to pop up with a couple of goals. What can you remember about that day, and tell us about that day, the FA Cup final?
Yeah, well, I tell you what, that season when I joined, I wasn't a young boy. I was 24, but I felt like I'd come from Bradford, where I was a big fish in a small pool, if you like, to being a little fish in a big pool. And I was in awe of the people like Peter Reid and Kevin Ratcliffe and Graham Sharp and Big Southall. And I never really felt, certainly first season, I did myself justice at all. I remember scoring as he said, I don't score many goals. I scored the winner against Wimbledon, who were the holders at the time, in a quarter-final tie at Everton. The Goodison, the atmosphere was incredible to get through to the semi-final. And then, obviously, a semi-final. And I got left out of the team just before the semi-final, first time that season. I was on the bench at Norwich, against Norwich in the semi-final at Villa Park, when obviously the same day at the same time the tragedy was occurring at Hillsborough with Liverpool. And then obviously things transpired. Liverpool got to the final, Everton got to the final. And in the morning of the game, running up to I'd always been involved in the team, either playing or being on the bench. But the manager never named the substitutes until lunchtime, and there was 4 of us up for it. And I remember walking up the stairs after pre-match. It was going 12:15 there, and the manager, Colin Harvey, was behind me. And I'd walked up 2 flights of steps, and he'd not said anything. I'm thinking, this isn't good news. I don't think I'm going to even make the bench. It had been the first time that season I'd not been, involved. Anyway, as he went to his room and I went the other way, he went, Mackie, you're sub today. So it's just first and foremost, it was just a relief. I had a few of my family down, but I kept saying I'm not sure if I'm going to be even involved. So we get to the stadium. Obviously, it's an unbelievable occasion. Liverpool, Everton, after the tragedy of Hillsborough, and it's a red hot day. I think it's 93 degrees or something like that. So as a substitute, there's only 2 subs. You're thinking in them temperatures, the Wembley. Obviously, turf, sapped energies. Hopefully, I can get on and get on early. And thankfully, I think it was after about an hour, Paul Bracewell were 1-0 down. Paul Bracewell came off and I came on. And it was in the dying embers of the game, I think 89th, 90th minute. Then I managed to toe poke. I was always deadlift from a yard. I managed to toe poke a ball in almost the last kick of the game, and to get us level, and then extra time. And I came on as a substitute, and Ian Rushard came on as a substitute for Liverpool. And then Rushy scored to make it 2-1. I managed to, actually decent volley from outside the box to make it 2-2. And then straight away Rushy scored. So I became the first substitute to score 2 at Wembley, closely followed by Ian Rush, who got 2 for Liverpool on that day. But yeah, as memories go, for me, obviously for my family, it was great to look back on 2 goals. But I'll be honest with you, I don't even know where that medal is, because it's a loser's medal. In fact, I'm not even sure if I've got it. So yeah, it was good to look back on, and people talk about the 2 goals at Wembley. But I'd have much rather have played in the game and not scored and got a winner's medal. But yeah, I suppose, like you say, it sort of put me on the map a little bit. Them, and then it took off, and Scotland I certainly gave me a lot more confidence for the second season, and I went back in and I thought, right, I'm going to have to not be in awe of everyone and play my own game. And thankfully, the last 2 seasons at Everton were really enjoyable, and I thought I played quite well then, as opposed to my first season where I was just sort of a bit part player really. And what I should have done, I should have gone in there with a bit more confidence, but it worked out in the end.
Meanwhile, up in Scotland, Graham Souness leaves Rangers and comes down to Liverpool. Walter takes over and brings in Archie Knox.
Yeah.
In that summer, Rangers come calling just after sealing three in a row, where Mark Hateley will get a couple of cracking goals against Aberdeen. What were your early memories of Rangers' interest, and was it a difficult decision to come up and join Rangers, and what were you told about the club and Walter's vision and things at the time?
Yeah, well, it's funny because my back end in my 3rd season at Everton, where, as I said, things were going quite good, and I enjoyed my time at Everton, there's no doubt about it. And then right out of the blue, the back end of the season, I got a phone call. I have no idea who it was from. The guy said he was a journalist, and he just asked me, the first thing he asked me, would I be interested in joining Rangers? And I'm thinking, what, Berwick Rangers or Stafford Rangers? But Glasgow Rangers, And the second thing he asked me is what school I went to. And what school did I go to? Obviously, I know now what he was on about, but it was quite funny. Anyway, it was a short call, and he just basically knew, would I be interested if the chance arose, that Graham had been interested in signing me at the end of the season. So, I thought, wow, that would be amazing. As I said, as much as I loved my time at Everton, I wasn't looking to move, but the new manager, Howard Kendall, had come in, and I think, he'd made it clear that he wanted to move a couple of people on. He had a lot of midfielders at the time, and I would probably be one of them. And then, not long later, the bombshell that obviously Graham left and left to go to Liverpool. So I didn't know where that stood me anymore. I thought, well, that'll be knocked on the head, the move to Rangers. And obviously, I kept in touch. I watched the game at Motherwell where Rangers got beat, and then the final game was amazing, wasn't it? Big March 2 goals to win the league was fantastic. But then again, in the close season, it was all quiet, and then right just before the deadline, I got a phone call again out of the blue. I think the agent rang me to say Rangers were back in, and they'd like me to go up and talk to them. That time, Everton had just brought Peter Beardsley in, and I was looking forward to playing with Peter because I thought he was a world-class player. But in answer to your first question, did I have a second thought about it? I couldn't get to the airport quick enough at the end because I knew there was one manager in Walter Smith who was desperate to sign me, which was great. And I had another manager in Howard Kendall who was happily wanting me to go to free up some funds to bring them in. So that made the decision easier. And I remember getting a call from Howard Kendall. It was Thursday afternoon, and he rung me and he just says, "Listen, bit of news. I know you'll be sat at home, but it's deadline day up in Scotland. There's a chance Rangers, would want to speak to you. Could you make it up there?" Well, little known to him, I was already in Manchester Airport, waiting to fly up because my agent had told me to get ready, but I had to have it confirmed by obviously Howard Kendall. And next minute I'm speaking, I would say, "Oh yeah, I can get up there. I'll get up there." Next minute the tannoy, bing bong. The next flight to Glasgow. In fact, it was to Edinburgh I was going. We'll be leaving. So my cover was busted there. I think he knew. But I think my agent and Howard knew each other quite well, and Howard already knew I was heading up there. So, yeah, I flew up to Edinburgh, and I think Walter was away at the time, just coming back off his holiday. And I met Archie picked me up and took me to David Murray's offices just in Edinburgh. And I remember being in there, and it was all down to whether if Trevor was going to go to Marseille. So then that freed up a midfield space for myself. That deal got done. I had to then get back down to Glasgow to do a medical before I think the midnight 12 o'clock deadline for European deadline. And the journey back down the road with Archie, he was telling me how much I was going to love it and putting the shirt on. And of course, I don't even think I discussed finances. It was just getting back down to Ibrox. But on the way down, I never thought I'd get there. Archie must have it. You have the two lanes of the motorway and you can see it's flashing. It's going into one lane and the bollards and the cones are starting taking it up. Archie was that busy talking to me about how great it's going to be at Rangers and that. He hit nearly every cone in the road and boom, boom, boom. I thought I don't think we're ever going to get to Ibrox. But in the end, we got there. And, as I said, I knew Archie a bit. Obviously, I knew Archie from his time down at Manchester United, but I didn't really know Walter, I've got to be honest. To get in there on the Thursday night, managed to do the medical, and then joined up with the team on Friday. And the first training session at Ibrox ahead of going to Hearts was just a whirlwind, but an incredible moment for myself, and probably one of the proudest ones going up the marble staircase. When I signed was just an absolute dream come true.
That first season at Ibrox, you win the league, you win the cup double as well. What did it mean to you to lift a bit of silverware with Rangers? And could you sense, even at that early stage, that team and that squad were on the cusp of something pretty special? Well,
yeah, I think the key thing, without a doubt, for me was the cup semi-final win at Hampden. I think we'd been knocked out of Europe. we'd been knocked out by Hibs, I think, in the Skull Cup. We were doing okay in the league, but this was a real test. And I genuinely think that night that's when Walter's team was born, I think, because, we remember the scenario, it was bouncing down. It was a really horrible night. We came out, and within 5-6 minutes, David Robertson, our left back, who was a great servant for us, had taken Archie Knox's words literally when he told him to take wee Joe Miller out. They used to play together at Aberdeen. I think Robbo took him out by his throat with his studs, and I don't think the referee had any hesitation in giving Robbo a red card. And obviously we go down to 10 men for 80 odd minutes against his main rivals. But the game carries on, and just before half time I managed to nick the ball halfway and square it to Coyce on the 18-yard box, and Coyce did what Coyce always did in the big games and put it in the bottom corner. And it was front of the Rangers end. It was brilliant. But we knew we had another, obviously, 45 minutes with 10 men. And we held out. Gorham, again, as usual, was outstanding. I think I can remember McStay hitting the bar. And we held on. And I remember in the dressing room looking round, and you think, right, this is it. You can trust people. If we can go head-to-head with our nearest rivals with 10 men and come out the other side, there was a real bond beginning to build in that squad. This was Walter's team now. And, I think that led on to us winning the league. And then going on and probably winning one of the poorest cup finals of the season against Airdrie 2-1. But I think the key was, not the performance. Although I was quite disappointed after the game, wanted to win it in style. It was the first time Rangers won the Scottish Cup for 11 years, which was quite incredible when you look at Graham's side who he had. I remember Jimmy Bell, the kit man, used to go in his room and he had pictures up of everyone. He had Terry Butcher and Chris Woods and Graham Souness, and he did have many Scottish ones. I think he had Coyce and Durrant, his favourites. But I used to say to Jimmy, what does it take to get up there, get on your wall? And he says, well, you have to win the Scottish Cup. So we won that. And I don't know if I was more pleased at winning the Scottish Cup and getting a medal, or actually walking back in on Monday and making it onto Jimmy's wall in his kit room, So they were good times. But yeah, it was a fantastic first season, obviously, to do the double. And them days, 9 in a row, one talked about. We'd only four seasons in. It was just getting that first season under Walter and putting building blocks in progress for what hopefully was going to be a successful time to come.
Also, the following campaign, that 92-93 campaign, perhaps one of the most successful of your time, and through all the guys that I speak to from that squad, they always rank that campaign and that side as perhaps the best they played in during the time at Ibrox. Also, the first piece of silverware, you get a League Cup in October, you get the goal in the final, beating Aberdeen. Just talk us through that day, and obviously it's a special moment to win the cup, but for yourself to score a goal as well must have been great.
Yeah, because as you say, it didn't happen much. But yeah, I know, and it's fun. I think when you go back to that season, 92-93, and people will always reminisce about the 9 in a row era, and naturally the first people to mention is Gaza and Laudrup and Big George and people like that. But I think, like you say, the 92-93 season was probably more successful. In the middle of the park was me and Ian Ferguson, and Bormer and Big Slim, and lads who didn't get loads of mentions. Obviously, you had Coyce and Big Mark up top, and Durrant, who was a man for big occasion. But we just had a real, spirit. I mean, a number of times we went behind in games, and that we had a 44 unbeaten run, as you say. We got beat at Dundee 4-3, and I remember Walter, really lacing into us that day. He didn't do it often. And then we just went on an unbelievable run, the 10 games undefeated in Europe, which was, incredible memories, to be honest. But yeah, the cup win against Aberdeen was obviously the back pass rule had just come in, and early on in the game it went to Snelders, who Theo who bounced off his chest, and I managed to put it through Lee's legs for the first goal. And I remember Theo joined us from Aberdeen seasons later. I used to always remind him to keep his legs shut after that, because it gave me great pleasure. Yeah, and it wasn't, like I say, it wasn't something I did often. And then we went on to get the first trophy of the season early on. Before, as you say, we used to play the League Cup before Christmas. We used to finish it then. To get that trophy in a bag early on, built us up for the rest of the season, really.
that day when Walter gave you all a bit of a hard time, could you have imagined that afternoon that you would go on the unbeaten run that you did and have the success that you did? Was it just a case of, well, we don't want to upset him again, let's go and try and regroup? But nobody would have thought how the rest of that season would have unfolded. Obviously beating Aberdeen again in the Scottish Cup final, winning the league. It turned into a really memorable and a remarkable season for you.
It was, and obviously throwing the European campaign in which we were a one-game playoff against Marseille away from getting to the final of a European Cup at the time, Champions League, whatever, was fantastic. But yeah, I think and to clinch it all, to do that, I mean, you couldn't ask for better to win there. If Hampden's out of service, which it was at the time, to go and win the treble on your rival's patch, probably couldn't have summed up the season any better, really. It was I think the hard part then, after that, as much as confidence was so high, was actually then going on from there and trying to emulate that season. And I think, the season after was probably one of the... it was an okay season. It was the season after that was a bit poorer. But, yeah, it was... looking back on it, I think there was so many. As I said, I think when you had Coisty and Big Mark up top, we'd go behind in games, but we always believed that we would score goals. We're that sort of side, very attack-minded team. But we had, in them days, it's I think lacking now in football. It's been lacking for a long time. Leadership, captains. We had probably about 7 or 8 captains on the park, and it was just a spirit. I think the players bonded with supporters, and everything about the club at the time was surging forward, and just so lucky to be involved in such a great squad. But at a time when the club was flying at such a great club.
You also mentioned the Champions League games there. The 2 games against Leeds are still talked about and still remembered so fondly to this day. What did those 2 games mean to you? Obviously, I had been at Ellen Road as a boy. How special was that? And how special was playing those games?
Yeah, fantastic. Obviously, when the draw was made, Leeds were made favourites straight away. I think the midfield 4 was probably one of the best midfield 4s that they've ever played in the Premier League. Wee Gordon Strachan on the right, obviously Scottish international, fantastic player. Gary Speed, the late Gary Speed on the left, great player for Wales. Gary McAllister, middle of park, Scottish international, and David Batty, who was a tremendous England international as well in there. So there's a really strong midfield. So going into the games, I knew that was going to be an area, the part that was going to be key as well. But the atmosphere, I think, speak at Gary Mark, they'd say the atmosphere, the Leeds players have never, I don't think any of us had heard the atmosphere like that in the tunnel walking out. It was, you couldn't hear each other, and you could see the Leeds players looking at each other, and we'd come out, and obviously within a minute it's gone from the most riveting atmosphere to you couldn't hear a pin drop. Gary Mack strikes a volley, unbelievable strike in the top corner. And at that time, Rangers didn't give Leeds tickets, and Leeds didn't give Rangers tickets. We weren't allowed through the channels to have any away supporters there. But I'd done a deal with Gary Mack, and a couple of boys had swapped tickets, so I got Gary some for up here, and he got me some for my family down at Ellen Road. But I think that the key thing to that was to come back to 2-1. But I remember the final whistle going at Ibrox, and it was like a sort of a disappointment from the crowd, a sort of sigh, because we were on top so much the second half. We should have won by 3 or maybe 4, and because we never got another goal, I think there was a lot of doubts in people's mind that we could go down there. And the lead up to the game down at Ellen Road, I remember them went to ask a lot of the ex-Leeds players, the Scottish players, your Eddie Grays and people like that. I think Peter Lorimer. And it wasn't so much that Leeds were going to get through or they were going to win, it was how many they were going to win by. And I think that's how the English press looked at it as well. I remember people thinking it was going to be 3 or 4-0. And, we didn't need any more motivation, if I'm honest. It was a battle of Britain. We went down there and we did to them what they did to us. Big Mark scored a fantastic goal in the first couple of minutes, silenced the crowd.
Haley. Oh, a great goal! A fantastic goal for Rangers by Mark Haley.
And we went on there to obviously we had to do a lot of defending. They had Cantona up front. They had a good side, as I said before, and the goalie was in great form. And then we got a fantastic second goal, great counter attack, great cross by Big Mark, and Coisty, fantastic header.
Here's Hadley. Hoist on the far side. It's a super goal, and Rangers now have thoroughly killed off this European Cup tie.
So yeah, and lots of things I remember about it. Straight after the game, the first person in the dressing room after it was Sir Alex Ferguson. I think it was the first time he'd met up with Archie again after Archie had left him to come to Rangers and left Manchester United. I don't think they spoke since, but he came in, he went round all the players and congratulated us. And then we went back to Manchester. We were staying in Manchester that night before we flew back up. And obviously, you know, the rivalry down there, Manchester and Leeds, Man United and Leeds, really don't like each other. So we went out in Manchester to a sort of private function, and we got looked after there. And I remember coming back to the hotel about 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. Went up to my room, and I was rooming with Dale Gordon. There was bodies everywhere. I think Bomber's 2 pals were in the room. Durant, his brother. There was no room, so I went back down in the lift, and I got to the bottom of the lift. I was going out to see if the hotel had another bed for me, or a spare room. And David Dodd was sat there in the foyer, a cigar, champagne bucket, like bottle of champagne. And I always got taught it was always rude to let somebody drink on their own. So I pulled up a chair next to him, and we started reminiscing, and had a couple of glasses of champagne. And the next minute I can remember, ding, the lift doors opening up, and out came Walter, suited and booted, immaculate as always. He looked at me and Dodds, who were slumped in the chairs. Says, bus leaves in 15 minutes, make sure you're both on it. And I'm like, I've just woke up, and he's glaring, and that soon sobers you up. And he's walking away. He says, don't forget, we've got a big game Saturday. And as he's walking away, I've just gone, Gaffer, come on, it's only Celtic. And he's looked at me, and that was it. He just glared and carried on. So anyway, it transpires, we get back up the road on the Thursday, Friday, and it's an early kick-off to 12:30 Saturday, and we go out. And I remember thinking, we started the game and we didn't start well. Celtic were on top. And I thought, me and my big mouth, I wish I'd have kept my mouth shut. I said, oh, it's only Celtic. But, we just had a spirit about us that day, and every day. And Celtic were a better side. But I remember we Durante scoring, we held on, and we just stuck together as a unit. And, it was, So the game against Leeds, the second game, was fantastic. Put Scottish football on the map worldwide, really, and certainly put Rangers again there, because we'd beaten the English champions, and we were going on further into Europe.
How do you reflect on that Champions League campaign as a whole? Obviously, it ended in disappointment. You had the whole Marseille situation as well. When that season ended, having had such great success domestically, was there a wee tinge of regret that you couldn't go all the way in the Champions League?
I think only afterwards, when it came out, obviously, about the match fixing or whatever went on, I never really worried too much about that. But I think the sort of disappointment was sort of balanced out with the pride that we'd sort of shown as the club. The supporters travelling in Europe were fantastic. The players, the football club name in general throughout Europe. I think the game against Marseille was the key one over there. Obviously at home we were 2-0 down against them. I mean, they had world-class players. And we came back and showed the spirit and drew 2 each, 2 late goals, Swiggy and Big Mark again. And then when we went out there, Big Mark had got sent off, so we missed him out there, but we Durante again, fantastic, finish into far corner. And we give us a lot there. And we if we'd have won that, we knew we'd have been in the final. But likewise, if we'd have lost it, we'd have been out. So we still have a chance going into the last game again, CSK at home. And I think what sticks in my mind that night, obviously we needed Marseille to get beat in the other game, which they managed to win. So our game was irrelevant in that case if we'd have won or not. But I remember 2 things. I remember 0-0 finishing, and their players celebrated as if they'd won the Champions League. And I remember thinking that was a bit strange, because all they'd done, they'd got a draw. They'd not, so maybe when you look back, were they on big bonuses to do that? I don't know. But it was strange at the time. But I think my overriding feeling was one of pride again, because I remember Goffey, cut head, bandages, a bit like Terry Butcher back in the World Cup days. And we did a lap of honour, even though we'd gone out of Europe. And the fans rose. I mean, they all stayed behind, and they give us a tremendous ovation going off the park at the end of it, and that'll always stick with me in that memory. So yeah, disappointed we couldn't go a step further, but realistically, with the side we had, to go as far as we did against some really good sides was a great achievement.
Sure, we've had Ian Ferguson and Dave McPherson on the pod, and we asked them this question, and perhaps a difficult one, but do you feel any resentment towards Marseille, even now after everything's transpired and what came out about how they behaved that year?
Do you know, I don't really. I never got involved in all that. I suppose if I've looked in it in more detail and realised what went on and that, but because I don't know enough about it. But I think if you just look at the quality of player they had, I mean, I don't know, who to say they wouldn't have gone on and did what they did, because, as I said, they had world-class players in that side. And I think it was just an absolute tribute to ourselves. They couldn't beat us over the 2 games. A lot of our lads, we were just a tight-knit unit. We weren't all even internationals at that stage. We had lads that were just, were great teammates. But to answer your question, no, I don't get hung up about that. If I'm honest, it happened. Whatever happened, as I said, I don't know enough about it, and it's not going to change anything. So looking back and being bitter and resentful doesn't help. Looking back and being proud of his achievements makes me feel better, if I'm honest. Would
it surprise you if I told you that Ian Ferguson wasn't quite as forgiving?
It wouldn't surprise me at all about Fergie, no. But everyone's got a different makeup. I thought Fergie was not only a really good top player, but a good lad. Great dressing room, great time in dressing room, and he was a good pal, and he always will be.
Moving on from obviously the highs of 92-93, you've touched on this earlier, but 6 in a row Rangers would do the double, would beat Hibs, and Ali would obviously make his return in all the only way Ali could. But that was, we've spoke to Big Dave, and we've said to Ian as well that it was a good season. Rangers done the double, but it was a tired season. I mean, there was a lot of injuries. Even things like the pitch was knackered, and a lot of things went wrong. But to do the double is still a special season. But what's your memories of that year? And was it a accumulation of maybe the year before, and all them efforts just kind of rolled in, and we were just a wee bit tired?
Yeah, I think, listen, the whole season as a whole was okay. I think the season after it was, as we'll go on to, was poorer. But I think the highlights of that season, if you remember, I was injured at the time. I was in the club deck, and Fergie, talking about Ian, previously got a fantastic goal against Aberdeen in the quarter-final League Cup at Ibrox. And then the draw was made, and, Walter, we got drawn against Celtic. And at that time, obviously, it had to have a toss of the coin to see where we were going to play the game. And Walter had a toss of coin after the game live on telly with Joe Jordan after the Aberdeen quarter-final. And the coin tossed, and Joe got it right. And then it looked like it was going to be the semi-final was going to be at Celtic Park. But then they decided that was just to decide who was going to call. So Walter threw that in, and anyway, so they did it again. Joe then had the privilege of calling, but he called it wrong. So we won the toss, and the game was going to be at our park, obviously at Ibrox. And I remember going out that night, believe it or not. I think there was a few of the boys went out, and I got in a conversation with some Celtic supporters, and actually we're okay. And then one lad joined it, and I remember him saying, he called me a couple of names, thought it was a cheat. Well, I'd not tossed the coin. I'd not decided where the game was going to be, the semi-final. So there was a little bit of banter going, and I remember saying again, me and my big mouth, I says, listen, we'd rather play it, because our record at Celtic's ground was far better than was at home. We got better results throughout my time when we played away from home. We drew a lot at Ibrox and got beat a couple of times at home. But I'd said to him, I said, listen, I'd rather play at your place. We'll beat you up. And in fact, I said, we'll play you with 10 men. A bit bravo, because last time we played them, we had 10 men. Anyway, as you can imagine, weeks down the line, out we go to Ibrox. The worst thing is you're coming out the tunnel, and instead of seeing all your Union Jacks in the red, white and blue, you're seeing Celtic supporters because they had 50-50 split. So it was actually a bigger lift for their team and their players to come out at your rival's ground and half the ground. And it was a bit of a, a negative for us, if you like. It might have been better to play at their place. And there again, early on in the game, Peter Hooster gets sent off and we go down to 10 men. But again, digging deep, remember we Durante, Robin, I think it might have been Galloway on the dead ball line and squaring it back for Big Mark, who scored. And we ended up winning 1-0. And then going on and obviously, winning the League Cup final against Hibs, as you mentioned. So there were highlights in that season, although not many. But I think the end of the season came to a bit of we'd won the league and we didn't win many more games. I think that obviously the hugest disappointment. We're going for the double treble against Dundee United, and we just never turned up on the day. We were really, really poor, with a chance of, as I said, getting a second treble on the trot. So, yeah, we did have a few injuries. I think the last 5 league games, I don't think we won one. We went into the final in poor form, but everyone made us favourites because what we'd done. And it was just like a real damp squib end to the season. But when you look back, we still managed to win, 2 trophies.
The squad perhaps needed a wee bit of a lift, and you would say that 7 in a row was maybe a poorer season than 6. When I suppose that's right, because we didn't have any cup triumphs and we went out of Europe early. But you would play 36 times and bag 4 goals, but 7 in a row is probably fondly remembered by the sport because of the arrival of Brian Laudrup. Ian Ferguson called him the hernia maker because he was so difficult to get to in training, and one day in training he went one way and Fergie went the other, and away went his hernia. But what could you tell us about Brian and that season for 7 in a row? How did that change your game and change the team? Because I know Archie used to say, get the ball to Brian, etc. But how did that affect the team, and how did it affect your game?
Yeah, no, listen. From when I first came in, 91, 92, we'd added only 3 or 4 players each season, and mainly Scottish players. I remember Gordon Jury coming in and Big Duncan Ferguson and Alan McLaren and the like. And this season was the first season we'd actually, sort of highlight with Basil Bolly came in and obviously Brian came in. And I remember one of his first games against Celtic, and I was up again. I was injured. I was up in the stand and I was over watching it right at the top of the club deck, and it was right in the bottom corner. And I remember Brian, I don't know if it was Tosh McKinley or Tom Boyd went in with a tackle with him. And I remember Brian sort of skipping out a little bit. And, there was a bit of because we knew he was a good player. I didn't realise how good he was until he came and joined us. But I remember going down in the dressing room after the game. I think we drew 1-1. And I just had a quiet word with him and said, listen, I know that, tackling's not your game, but you can't be seen to do that in games like them. You've just really got to go put your foot in, even though if you're going to get smashed. And I think he took that on board. But, that was the only one negative. You look at him thinking, is he going to be the right type, to come into a league like this? Well, he certainly, showed my first thoughts was totally wrong. It was only one isolated incident in one of his early games. But then he went on to just be, again, not just an absolute outstanding footballer, but an outstanding person. Great guy. Joined in with the Scottish culture as much as he could, and which obviously meant having a couple of shandies now and again. And, I think his wife, certainly joined in and was made welcome. And, I think at that stage as well, the players and the wives, and, that helps, in the watching the games and the families come, and it makes it a club that sort of helps people settle in. But yeah, Brian got lots of, long body, a big long body, didn't he? But, in training, I used to think we had, really good defenders, Goffey and Bomber and the likes, Big Slim. But Brian used to sort of embarrass us all. He used to take it past 4 or 5 and put it in the corner. And I think sometimes Archie and Walter used to have to sort of pull him and say, listen, steady on, make it 2 touch for 5 minutes, so he'd have to just pass it and couldn't dribble around us all. But no, it was just, it was a fantastic talent. And yeah, there were stages where, getting the ball wherever he played. But I think Walter was clever. He played him out wide sometimes, but then he ended up going down the middle and playing in a free role, and he could roam from left to right. creative. He enjoyed creating goals as much as he'd scoring them. But it was certainly, after the season we'd had, he was the player that came up. And as I said, that the season, his first season in Basel, I thought it was quite a poor season. We got knocked out in all the Europe, League Cup, Scottish Cup very early on. But we managed, obviously, to win the season that year. And Louders, he was a highlight of the season, no doubt, that year.
That following campaign, Stuart, the 8-in-a-row campaign, also fondly remember for how it ended with the Loudrock final and also the Gaza performance and inspiring Rangers to victory over Aberdeen that wins the league. How did having Gaza in the squad impact things? But how did also having him in the team impact on you? Was it just a case of you do the dirty work and then I'll give the ball to him?
Yeah, but no, I think as the previous season we'd obviously brought Bolly and Laudrup in. The club then went and sort of eclipsed that, if you like, and brought Paul back from Italy, which was greeted with universal acclaim by all the supporters, and he settled in, brilliant. And again, you don't need me to tell you about his ability, but as a person in the dressing room, probably the most generous, kind-hearted person I've ever known. Obviously he had his demons at times, but once he got on that football park, he was a genius. But in fairness to him, we were all fighting for. Obviously, Gaza arrives. There's myself. There's Fergie. There's lots of other good midfielders there at the same time, and we were all battling for places in the team. But I remember we starting off with Gaza and sort of saying to him, "Listen, I'll do the tackling and the graft and the defensive side of it, and I'll just get you the ball and you go and hurt the teams." Different to Louders, because Brian played the higher up the park, but that was that. If we could get the ball to Brian, we knew he'd create a lot of stuff in the season prior to it. This time, but then Gaza, he just wanted to be a normal box-to-box midfielder. He would say to me, no, he says, and he'd track his runners and he'd put tackles in and he'd try to win headers. He wasn't the greatest of tacklers, but he would never just give up on his defensive duties. And so for me, he wasn't a luxury midfield player in that because he had a great ability. But he would do all the other stuff as a proper teammate. He'd work hard for the team. There was times when, we'd play him in a more advanced role. But, he wasn't one that would say, he could easily just say to me, that's right, well, you do all that and just give me the ball. But he wasn't like that. He was a proper team player as well. I think he'd been brought up the right way. He wasn't a luxury forward type player. He did everything, but obviously his main assets when you got him on the ball, his dribbling ability, his passing ability, the way he could shield the ball and everything. So, did it change my game? Not really. Obviously, it was a different partner to like Fergie had been. Me and Ian were seen as probably two similar players, got up and down the park, got tackles in. Fergie probably had a better scoring record than me. And then Gaza, and we sometimes always played in a three as well at times. But so it was a different partner, but creativity, it was incredible. And obviously no better day than the game at home to Aberdeen to clinch 8 in a row. And it's funny how you go on and talk about the Loudrup Cup final when Paul Gordon-Jury, one of my best pals, gets a hat-trick in that game, and they still call it the Loudrup Cup final. But, that was the measure of what a good day Brian had as well. But I think when we talk about a couple of the Dundee United Cup final back in was it 93, 94, and we finished on a damp squib, I think what helped us to probably put in our best cup final performance, beating obviously Hearts 5-1, was the fact that we had to play at the top of his game all season. Celtic under Tommy Burns, they only lost one game that season. They pushed us all the way. So going into the last 4 or 5 games of the season, every player to get in the side had to be on top of the game. And that, I think, showed in the cup final when we went out and, played so well. And for me, that was a, unbelievable season, to do the double like that and how we did it, winning it almost on the second last day with Gazza's hat-trick and then going beating Hearts 5-1. It couldn't have been a better finish to the season, really.
How do you reflect on the 9-in-a-row campaign? Also a huge one for the club and for the manager and that squad, but not a great one for yourself. Was it tricky to be on the fringes of the squad and having to watch on as history was made?
It was, yeah. Obviously, felt unbelievable that we managed to do 9 in a row, what we'd strive for. We started talking about 9 in a row, certainly supporters, when we got to maybe 6 or 7. So to clinch 9 in a row was brilliant. But yeah, I don't know. I think even if at Dundee United, I felt a little bit of a fraud, being involved in it, looking in, even though I'd not played a part. But, I think, as you say, going back right at the top programme, when you say I got 6 medals, or 6 league titles, should I say, which is true. Because people sometimes put me down for just having 5. But, in that league campaign, I only played 7 times. But as I said to the gaffer, at the end of the season, we won all 7. I think the last game we beat Celtic at home 2-0. So even though I'd only played 7 games, he managed to get me a medal, because I think you had to play a percentage of games. But, I did remind him that them 7 games were critical in us winning 9 in a row. So that was a little bit of comfort I took in it. But yeah, obviously brilliant to do 9 in a row. But I did feel after playing and contributing so much in the previous season, or playing a lot of games anyway, then to miss out on so much was slightly disappointing from a personal point of view, naturally. But, one that we'll always look back on as a club with, fantastic memories.
I just say, Stuart, that we spoke to Michael Ball about this as well, and he obviously had a lot of time injured, and he said similar to you that he maybe didn't feel part of it and things. But can I just say something to yourself? Of all the people that deserve to enjoy 9 in a row, you're certainly one, and you certainly shouldn't feel like a fraud. The performances and everything you gave us on that run up to 9, certainly mean, you were unlucky with injury in that season, but you certainly weren't a fraud to be a part of that. You were outstanding in our years coming up to that.
No, I appreciate that, but it's funny because I can remember when I did it Ajax away, and I snapped me tendon, my ligament. And funny enough, it was 11 months to the day that I made my comeback, and it was at home against Celtic in the reserves on a Saturday afternoon. There was no first team games on. I think it might have been an international week, and I think we Gattuso played, and we came back, and it was 11 months to the day I returned, and there was 30 odd, not to see me, may I add, but because there was no game. And I think it was the second or third highest crowd in the entire in Britain. So that just showed you the pull that obviously Rangers Celtic games had at that time. But yeah, it was that season was it was a great season. But to be there at Tannadice and to be involved in it afterwards, and to see Charlie Miller cross it with his left foot and Brian head it, was things you'd never see on a football park. So yeah, no, I listen, and going out, obviously I went to all the games, and I was as big a supporter as anyone. But yeah, I suppose when you look back on the whole 9 in a row campaign, it was nice to play as many games as I did, and then obviously naturally look back on with great memories.
The following season, obviously it didn't work out, and we didn't manage to win the league. Obviously disappointment in the Scottish Cup, and it would turn out to be your last year with the club. You managed 38 appearances, chipped in with a couple of goals. We've spoke to boys before about this, and there was a lot of a kind of accumulation of things that happened that year, with Gaza going, and Brian maybe not being where he should be mentally, injuries, Walter leaving and things like that. How do you sum up your kind of last year in light blue?
Well, I think as a whole, you can not make excuses when you say point to lots of things. I think if you look at the beginning of the season, I mean, at the end of that last season, things like Bomber retired, Trevor Stephen, Goffey went away, Big Mark finished, David Robertson left. So there's a real strong core of what had won us 5, 6, 7, 8 in a row. And we had that going. And maybe it was time for a few of them. We were all getting a bit older, whatever. And as I say, a couple retired through injuries or whatnot. But then we obviously had a big influx. I think we brought, the 4 Italian boys in. And that season, I think we brought maybe, 11, 12, 13 players in, which was a big, big change. Yeah, then obviously it coming out about, which I know for a fact the gaffer didn't want it to come out, but it came out that he was leaving at the end of the season, stepping down. Brian, it came out that he joined a pre-contract with Chelsea. Gaza left, although he didn't leave up until probably March, back end of it. So though he'd gone in January, but he played a lot of the season. Goffey'd come back. So you can put a lot of things down to it. Certainly, I think Celtic got stronger. They then got players in the team, likes of Stubbs and Burley, that not only were decent players or good players and Lambert, but they actually then started mixing outside socially, and they started getting a bit of spirit about their group. So that played a part for them. But you can throw everything into the pot about whose fault or why we didn't do it or whatever. The bottom line is we had a home game against Kilmarnock, the last game of the season, to win. And, you know, you have them days. Sometimes we had lots of chances and whatever. I don't know. I mean, we still had, obviously, an experienced side out in the park. But, you know, if I could ever play one game, I was fortunate. I played, I think, 998 competitive games in my career. Internationals and everything thrown in there, competitive games. And I think if I could play one game again, it would be that game. So for whatever reasons, injuries, players leaving, the gaffer going, Gaza leaving, we had to, even 4 games to go, we got beat at Aberdeen, I think 1-0. But the home game against Kilmarnock will always rankle, and we look back on that time. And I remember, again, and well, I still had another year left of my contract, but I think deep down I thought it might be time for me to go. But that day, I remember Goffey, it was going to be his last game at home, probably Coiste, Durante. You know, a lot of the players, we were doing a lap of honour at the end of the game, and it was so emotional because, you know, we'd looked as though we'd blown it, and which in the end we had. But yeah, so hugely disappointing to where it ended. You can point to lots of things, but, you know, we had one game to win, and unfortunately, you know, in the past when we needed to win and we managed to do it, but we couldn't win that game. But then even the cup final, you know, we can point to things at the cup final. Yeah, you're not clutching at straws. The penalty early on for Hearts was probably, I don't know, a couple of feet outside the box. Fergie's challenge, I think, on Stevie Fulton, was it? But what I remember of that night is going back to Ibrox, the first time, obviously, none of us had won a trophy that season. And, you know, as we do, there was a sort of a party after the game back at Ibrox in the Suites. I remember myself, Durante and Coiste going back down to the dressing room to have one last look round, really. And all 3 of us sort of broke down at once, you know, tears, crying, grown men. But, you know, it was really emotional and tough. But then, you know, let's think of what we have done, what we did succeed at, what we've not just won, but the memories that we've got, the pals that we've made. Fortunate to play for, you know, unbelievable football club. And we ended up going back upstairs and with his families and the other players, and, you know, we sort of had a tribute to, yeah, it was hugely disappointing. Of course, we not to win anything that season, and to go out, you know, to leave the club on a season how we were going to do. But it was more of we turned it into sort of a reminisce the great times and remembering certain games and remembering certain trophies, remembering certain parties or whatever it may be, and memorable times. So yeah, it was a sad way, very sad. As I say, I had a season left, and I spoke to, you know, I think it was, I can't remember who I spoke to. I don't think it was Dick direct, or it might have been, and he wanted, or it might have been David Murray, but he wanted me to stay on for another season. I wouldn't play as many games, but I would be there as a sort of help the younger ones come through. You know, you likes of Charlie Murray, Derek McInnes was there, obviously young Barry Ferguson, and maybe to help them come through. But Jonas Turner had come, George was in there. You know, we had a multitude of, Fergie was still there, I think, Ian. Loads of midfielders. I just felt it was right at that time. At the end of the season, I had a year left. I didn't want to, you know, leave Rangers, but I thought, you know, Dick coming in with his, you know, a lot of foreign players coming in, some fantastic buys he brought. And I just felt it was an end of an era with Walter and Archie going. The players that I've said, you know, that I'd played all my 7 years with, that I'd left the club. And I just felt it was right for Rangers and it was right for myself. But, you know, it was a sad time, obviously, when I walked out indoors. But I remember, you know, John Gregg famously saying, you know, once you've been a Ranger, you'll never be a stranger. And, it couldn't have been truer. Every time I go back to the club, I'm met with great warmth, and it fills me with great pride that I managed to play as many times as I did for, probably the best club in the world.
You mentioned right at the start of this podcast, Stuart, how when you were at Bradford, the aim was to play top flight football with Bradford. Did you ever think that when you went back there after leaving Rangers, that dream would be realised all those years on?
No, certainly not. Especially after the first 5 games, I think we were third bottom of the championship, as you call it now. But again, we went on a run and we had a good spirit in the side, and we managed to clinch promotion the last day of the season at Wolves 3-2. I mean, there were some big sides in that division, and for a side like Bradford, we weren't fancy to go up. So yeah, to go back there at 34, and I think a few people think I'd gone down to wind down my career. It was an unbelievable season. To get promoted back into, I don't think they'd been Bradford for 77 years, played in the top flight of English football. So that was another box ticked and a dream come true, yeah.
Also, perhaps one of the more kind of emotional games, I'm assuming, for you during that time was your testimonial playing for Bradford against Rangers. A crowd of over 20,000 down at Rally Parade. What did it mean to you to have that day? And obviously, you mentioned the words of John Gregg there, to have the success that you had at Rangers, to then have a testimonial, to then be inducted into the Hall of Fame. There's a lot of boxes being ticked there for you.
Oh, incredible memories. I mean, if I had a penny now, for everyone that said to me, every Rangers supporter says that was probably one of the best days I've ever had travelling and watching Rangers throughout the world, Europe, whatever people speak to. And I always think if I had £1 for everyone that wasn't sober that day, I'd be a very rich man. But yeah, I mean, I think if you speak to supporters, that they remember that day fondly. But it started from nothing. I mean, I was up at a European game. I can't remember. I don't know if it was Strasbourg. I don't know. I can't remember who Rangers were playing. I came up for the game Tuesday, Wednesday night to have a meeting with Dick Advocaat really about see if Rangers could bring a team down at the end of the season for my testimonial. And Dick says as much as he would love to, it was impossible with the schedule. Players playing international football. Rangers didn't know where they were going to get in the cup competitions. So it was really an impossibility, which, he looked at it, he weighed it up, and he unfortunately couldn't do. And I remember that evening I was telling John Brown about it. And he said to me, why don't you get the old boys back together? And I'm thinking, well, nobody will be that interested in getting old boys. And, how can that work? He says, well, you get a Rangers team and a Bradford team and play against each other. I never thought any more of it. 24 hours later, back in my home, I got a phone call from Bomber who'd said he'd got 16 players already signed up for it. He'd got Walter and Archie and Dodgy to come back. He got Jimmy Bell to drive the kit van and bring the kit down. All I had to get was somebody to play Broxy Bear, which was quite easy with the family I had. So it was, and I'll just give him a wee name check. It was Darren from Glasgow. My good pal Darren, he played Broxy Bear, so there you go. But, and I remember meeting with the police, and the police said to me at the time, so how many fans are you expecting from Rangers? And I went on the sort of exaggerated side. I thought to see a group of sort of has-beens, old boys. Having said that, some of the boys were still playing at the time. I said 3,000. So I think I had to pay a £20,000 police bill before we got the game on, and then lo and behold, I think that the highest crowd Bradford had up to then was in the Premier League against Manchester United at 21,500. I think it held 24,000. And there we go. Over 11,000 bears travelled down, took 3 parts of the stadium. Bradford fans still talk about it to this day. I don't think they watched the game. They watched supporters doing the bouncing, singing 9 in a row for the entire football game. And the game itself, I mean, it was brilliant. I mean, Big George came back. Fortunately, Brian couldn't make it. Brian was on his way and he couldn't make it. But all the legends of years gone by. And I remember it was organised that I would then play for Bradford for the first half, and the second half I'd go play for Rangers. Well, lo and behold, Rangers were 3-0 up at half time, and I've come in and I've gone to knock on the dressing room door, and the gaffer's opened it up, and he basically says, "What the hell am I doing there? They don't want me. They're winning 3-0. Go back to Bradford and play for them." So it was quite embarrassing. But anyway, they let me put a shirt on. We came out, and then inside the first, I don't know, half an hour, Bradford had scored 2 goals. So it was now Rangers 3, Bradford 2, and I'd been on the pitch. Five goals had been scored, and I'd been on the losing end all the time. And I remember in the last few minutes, to finish the game, put Bradford top on top of me. Rangers shouldn't play for Bradford for the last 5 minutes. And Gordon produced 2 unbelievable saves at the top draw from me, a volley and a header. 2 world-class saves, just what he did all his career. And I had to explain it was my testimony that he should let me win. Game finishes 3-3. I think the breakdown within the park and Gordon Jury scores, and Rangers win 4-2. So out of all the game, 6 goals, I was on the losing side for each goal going in. So that doesn't normally happen. And then just to cap it all, I mean the party afterwards at night was incredible. We had a Coises Powie, Cliffy came down, a band. We had music on till the early hours. The staff stayed, the players stayed, and yet again, we celebrated like we used to always do normally at the end of the season, and we had one big party, and it was an emotional day. And my 4 kids all draped out in the Bradford and Rangers kits as mascots. Obviously, I've still got the videos of the game. If I ever feel a bit sort of, I don't know, not down, but needing a lift, just bang that on and watch the game and the atmosphere. And as I said, speak to Rangers supporters to today. The number of people that came down that day, and probably can't remember much about it right enough, but it was a fantastic, and I was so proud to have them people come together, supporters, players, staff. Such a great day for me.
You then round off your playing days with a couple of seasons at Sheffield United, played until just a couple of days before your 41st birthday. By that stage, was it time to call it a day?
Well, it's funny actually, because obviously I'll go to Bradford at 34. I stayed there for 4 years, and I remember Jim Jeffries coming down and managing Bradford, and I got on well with Jim, and I was actually part of the coaching staff because I'd been an assistant manager. I came to one game and one training session, I was a bit under the weather, and I remember him pulling me aside and sort of saying, like, I think it's time to call it a day. I think your legs have gone. Well, I'd been ill. I'd had tonsillitis, and I thought it was a bit harsh. So we had a few words, and actually I didn't agree with him. I didn't think the legs had gone, but maybe he'd been right. But anyway, in the weeks transpired, and Jim left, and at the end of that season, I ended up playing another, I think, 20 odd games, and every time at end of the season at 38, I got Bradford released me, and I went to Sheffield United under Neil Warnock, and I was on not very much money. It wasn't for the money. It was just to see if I could, big stadium, could I go play another year with some young players and help them out. Sheffield United went on to have the best season they ever had. We got to the playoff final, although we got beat against Wolves. We got to the FA Cup semi-final against Arsenal. Seaman played off one of the best saves of ever. We got beat 1-0, and we got beat by Liverpool. Beat them at home 2-1 in the semi-final of the League Cup, and got beat at Anfield 2-0. Where a young Stevie Gerrard, I think he's still in here actually in this pocket here. No, he was only a young kid. He was only 18. Stevie had 19. Actually got his shirt after the game without knowing that he'd end up being the player and the person, and obviously the manager of Rangers that he's become. So yeah, it was a season like no other. I ended up playing the second season. I played till I was 40, and I played, I think, 80 games for Sheffield United in the Championship, added on to the 20 odd. So I remember after each game looking up at Peg when I put my boots down, thinking, "Here's to you, Jim." To Jim Jeffries, said my legs had gone. I ended up playing another 100 odd games in the Championship. So yeah, Sheffield United was brilliant. I went on to have 5 years there, 2 as a player, and 3 on the coaching staff, and again, fortunate enough to go to a club, brilliant supporters, and we had some really successful times, and ended up getting in the Premier League when I was assistant manager there. So yeah, it was fantastic. A good way to round off my career, really. I started at 18, and played till I was 40. So even though I had a few injuries along the way, I was very fortunate to play, as I say, 2 games short of 1,000 games. And I suppose if you throw the good games in there, I might have got to 1,000.
Stuart, just before we end this podcast and the first part of obviously your story, a couple of quick fire questions we like to do with everyone. Favourite Rangers goal?
Oh, well, you see, I didn't get many. Listen, I suppose the League Cup final against Aberdeen, the first goal, which is so crucial to score in a final, would have been. I remember scoring in the last minutes against Kilmarnock, the first home game, to get us going, to get the season up and running after we just had the title flag and
with the studs that day. I remember.
Yes, exactly. Just right in front of the Portland. I was a brilliant finisher when we studs. I was that, yeah. But I actually, when I look back again, and somebody sends you clips of goals, I actually got some decent goals. But a couple of goals against Sparta Prague, which were just good to start off with. But no, I think all my favourite Rangers goals have probably been scored by McCoy-Storr-Haley or Wiegert.
Okay, let's ask you your favourite Ibrox moment.
Oh gosh, I'd be here all day. Favourite Ibrox moment would be signing for the club. It's got to be the first training session out on the park on the Friday with all the coloured seats. It were back in the days where they had colour seats all around the stadium. Walking up the marble staircase to sign and to rubber stamp it. I couldn't put one highlight down football wise or not. Going into the kitchen every day and Tiny and Irene and just being involved in the club for 7 years, being so proud to walk through the doors every day really. So it'd be too difficult to go to one specific sport. Now, if you're asking me, the proudest moment in my career would have been getting elected into the Hall of Fame and Coyce to give me the award that night at the Glasgow Hotel with all my family there. That's probably got to be the most proudest. And then to walk up the steps now, when I sometimes go back with my kids or whatever it's been and see my name in the Hall of Fame, I don't think I could get prouder than that, to be honest.
And finally, your favourite funny story from your time at Rangers, if you can remember one from the dressing room. Ian Ferguson talked about the time when they put the fish in Dukey's car. Yeah. Have you got any that spring to mind?
I think, to be honest, everyone always mentions the Gaza one. I think most stories. Listen, we had some fantastic characters. Everyone talks obviously Coyce and Durante, but Bomber and Fergie and goalie. Everyone had we all had different little quirks and different sides to us. But I think the Gaza one probably the fish one follows on from. There's a lot of Gaza ones, but I remember we used to have a dress code at Rangers that stood for years and years, and I just, when I left Everton, I just signed a new deal with Nike, and I got all this Nike gear. I thought I looked the business, and I get to Rangers and they tell me it's a shirt and tie. Well, at that stage, I only had 2 shirts and 1 tie in my locker. I think at Everton we had a club suit, never wore a shirt and tie. So when I joined Rangers for I think first 3 or 4 weeks, so I never got out shopping. I was known as Willie One Tie. So I only had 1 tie, but so we had obviously the tradition of the shirt and tie, and we used to get fined if you didn't come in at 10 o'clock. Anyway, one morning, just getting like minute to 10, we're looking up. There's no gas going, brilliant, because I think it was a £5 a minute. You got charged, and that went to the kitty for the Christmas do or the end of the season do, whatever it may be. Anyway, minute just ticking on to 10 o'clock. We heard a squelching coming down the corridor. The door flies open. There's Gaza, immaculate, Armani shirt, Hugo Boss tie, big pair of fishing waders and a pair of wellies. There he was, just been fishing, but he didn't break any. He says, look, there's 10 o'clock, I'm not late, and I've got a shirt and tie on. So you couldn't argue with him. So then after that, he's standing there, go off to training, come back, have a bit of lunch, I do what I used to do, go into the gym, and everyone else departed, I've come back. And that was the only downside, and I still fall out with Jimmy Bell this day, because when Gaza signed, I got changed at number 3 peg, and I said, Jimmy, whatever you do, I'll give you anything. Do not put Gaza at 4. There's number 19 spare, 26 is spare. Do not put him at 4 next to me. So what did he do? He put him at 4. So for 3 years, I got changed next to Gaza. and you know, everything got changed. But that day I came back, I in a rush, had to go pick the kids up at school, go to put my shoes and socks on, not there, big pair of wellies, go to put my trousers on, not there, big pair of fishing waders, and my own shirt and tie. So I had to go and pick the kids up with the trackie on and a pair of trainers. But that was Gascoigne. You could never, when it changed next year, it'd be always little pranks, but we always got him back. I think he had to always remember there was more Scots than there were English in there. But I could go on and tell you loads of stories with Gazza, probably ones that won't be able to report on right enough. But the day when he burst the door open and he came in and he was there, his shirt and tie, but he had fishing waders and a pair of wellies on. I think the lads, you know, were rolling around the floor. But it ended up being a joke on me because he left them for me. But I got him back, don't worry about that.
Stuart McCall, they're great memories and great stories. It's been a massive privilege to have you on the 4LadsHadADream podcast. A huge thanks to you for your time this morning.
Brilliant. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. It makes you a lot feel better when you can look back at memories like that. Thanks, lads.
So a huge thanks to Stuart for joining us. We'll be back, obviously, to do the second part of the Stuart McCall story, which we'll talk about his management. Huge thanks, as normal, to Chris Jack for joining us. Chris, thanks very much, mate.
No problem at all. Always good to catch up with Stuart. There's some great memories, some great games, and some great stories there as well.
Yeah, Stuart was one of my heroes growing up at Rangers, as people know from previous podcasts. I was one of the 9-year-old boys, so I was one of the ones that made the trip down to Bradford for his testimonial with my good pal Stuart O'Neill. From all the way, we drove all the way from Fort William, and it was some trip. It was unbelievable. A couple of pints were sunk that weekend, Chris, I can tell you.
I can imagine. And quite right too.
So yeah, I mean, huge thanks to Stuart and Chris. We'll be back with the second part of the Stuart McCall story. But before we go, a huge thank you as normal to our to Stuart Franklin over at Gersnet. He hosts this, edits it, makes us sound good, takes out all our mistakes, and get onto the Gersnet website and come and join us to talk Rangers. There's always something going on. Also, a huge thanks to our sponsors, who are Kerry's Crazy Costumes. He's the Fiend TV on Twitter. Go and speak to him, and they can sort you out there. And also Custom Kitchen Factory guys. In these times, these boys have kept us going, helped us edit, and they will continue to sponsor us into next season and things. So it's a huge thank you to them guys. We also hope that you're staying safe, everyone, enjoying the podcast, and we're trying to keep you some Rangers content every week. So come on to the 4Lads page, Chris Jack's page on Twitter, and let us know if you're enjoying them and give us some feedback. Always keen to try and get on some names that you might like. Any suggestions, let us know, and we'll certainly try our best. All that's left to be said, Stuart McCall, Chris Jack, thanks very much. This has been 4LadsHadADream podcast. Until next time, ignore the nonsense, the irrelevant, and the noise.